Hello, it is November the 20th, 2024, and it's time for the weekly word, and the weekly word is necessary. So, growing up, you're a kid and you do kid things. And I've had a few times in my life where adults asked me, was that really necessary? Have you ever been asked that? And, you kind of laugh now looking back, but I wasn't always giggling at the time. Actually, sometimes Darlene still asks me that. And the problem isn't always just me acting childish at times, but sometimes it's something I do or how I respond in a situation. Darlene will say, is that really necessary? Well, our key verse is 1 Peter 1 and verse 6. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. If necessary, is it possible to rejoice or find joy in things that are necessary? The definition, according to Webster's, is what is essential, what is required, what is unavoidable, what we should do, not voluntary, what's needed, what we ought to do, what must be done. So in Matthew 16:21, the same Greek word here is used, and it's translated as must. And it says, from that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. For Jesus, the cross was necessary. Then in Matthew 16:24 and 25, Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life would lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Well, what exactly does that mean? It was necessary for Jesus. It's necessary for us. It means not just living for ourselves, for me, my flesh, my wants, my desires, but there's times when we go through hard times. Again, Peter called them various trials. It's not really a matter of if this is going to happen to us, it's a matter of when this is going to happen to us. And sometimes they're voluntary and sometimes they're involuntary. But the bottom line is that there's a purpose in it. There's a purpose both in the people that we're affecting, and there's a purpose in it for our own personal formation. And there's this reality that everyone alive is going through various trials, various hard times. And it's not just because we're believers. Sometimes we go through hard times because the Bible says that the wages of sin is death. And when we sow to the wind, we reap the whirlwind. And it's just God's mercy so that we see the error of our ways and make decisions that lead to life. Even discipline is necessary. So going back to our key verse, in the very next verse, Peter says, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Praise, glory, honor. Those are things that people aspire to, people want. But it's way more important to receive it from Jesus, either when he returns or when we go to see him, where it's going to last for eternity, than to just live a comfortable life right now and not develop into our full potential. So there are things in this life that happen to us that are necessary. There are things that we ourselves should do that are also necessary. In Matthew 18:33, the parable of the unforgiving servant, Jesus says, and should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? Same Greek word as necessary. It was necessary. Mercy is necessary. Forgiveness is necessary. It's in the Lord's Prayer. It's in the verses afterwards. Hey, are we doing the things that are really necessary? And The opposite of that is our lives being consumed by things that aren't really necessary. It has to do with priorities. We need to live a balanced life. We need fun. We need relaxation. We need times aside to restore our soul. But each and every day of our life, we're also created with certain necessary things to accomplish. In Job 23:12, Job says, I have not gone back from the commandment of his lips. I have esteemed and treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. Job's acknowledging that food is necessary, but even more necessary is feeding our spiritual man. In Matthew 25, verse 27, the parable of the talents, Jesus says, then you ought, that word ought is the same Greek word as necessary, to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So some things that are necessary that we ought to do are really practical, like it's wise and necessary to have some savings and investments. If you want to be healthy, it's necessary to exercise. Another practical example, John 4:3-4, story of the woman by the well. Jesus here, he left Judea and returned to Galilee. It was necessary for him to go through Samaria. Well, why does it say that? Well, the Jews generally didn't like to go to Samaria if they didn't have to, kind of like driving out of your way not to go through a bad neighborhood. It was a place they didn't like, but the Bible said it was necessary. There was a divine appointment waiting in the form of a woman at a well. And through that, many people there were going to come to faith. So, where in your life does there seem to be a detour or maybe some physical place that you're at or you're going to where you're not really comfortable, but maybe in God's eyes, it's necessary? In Acts 27:23-24, the Apostle Paul is on a ship in a big storm. And he says, for this very night there stood by my side an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve and worship. And he said, do not be frightened, Paul. It is necessary for you to stand before Caesar. And behold, God has given you all those who are sailing with you. Paul got himself in a bunch of messes, but he saw that it was necessary. That shipwreck was necessary. That getting bit by the snake was necessary. It was no coincidence, as we said last week. Again, what trouble is going on in your lives that's necessary to complete the purpose and the destiny that God has given you? So in conclusion, our key verse was 1 Peter 1:6. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. And its matching verse is James 1:2-4. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness or patience. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So James goes on in verse 12 and says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. So the tests are for a purpose. They're necessary. My prayer for you this week is that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, that you're able to rejoice and find joy and be thankful even in the trials and the testings, that you do not despise what God lovingly knows is necessary. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.